Hello, fourth graders. This is Miss Kyle, excited to talk to you more today about decimals. Before we get started, let's go over our lesson expectations. The first is always a quiet spot to work where you can be focused and present with me. So probably not a good idea to be around your TV or your dog or some people having a conversation. You want a quiet spot where you can be with me. The next thing is a positive attitude. If you're telling your brain, I can't do it, it's no wonder that learning isn't happening for you. It's so important for you to go at this with a positive attitude saying, I can do this. This is possible for me. The third expectation is to have your Chapter 9 workbook with you. And fourth and finally, a pencil to write with so you can go along with me on some of these problems and try your best. So if you're missing any of these things, go ahead and pause the video and make sure you have what you need, and then come on back to me. So today we are on lesson 9.3. Our learning goal for the day, I'd like you to please go ahead and read it to yourself. And now it will be my turn to read. It says, I will be able to record tenths and hundredths as fractions and decimals. So that is our focus for the day. And you may be thinking to yourself right now, what does that even look like, Miss Kyle? I have no idea what any of that means. I will be able to record. So that word record means write. So I can write tenths and hundredths as fractions and decimals. So let's go ahead and do a little bit of a review from our past lessons that we've done this week. First of all, do you remember what this place value would be right here? If we were to read aloud this entire decimal, what would it be read as? Go ahead and say it aloud now. Yes, so remember it's not just 1. This is representing 1/10 because we're working in our tenths place right here. Now, what if I were to add on this 0 to our number? So go ahead and read aloud what you think that entire number would be read aloud as. You can use this chart over here to help you. We've used this a few times in our previous lessons. And remember, when we say a decimal, we always want to recognize it as the last digit. So right here, we're dealing with 10 hundredths. That's right, because this 0 is in our hundredths place. We're dealing with 10 hundredths. Now, are you ready to have your mind blown? Check this out. These two decimals right here, 1/10 and 10 hundredths, are actually worth the same amount. In fact, I could even write 0.100000000 and just go on as long as I wanted, and they would be worth the same amount. They are considered equivalent or equal in value. So let's talk about that a little bit more because your mind is probably just blown right now. If I were to look at this in fraction form, if I'm starting with just 1/10, you can see over here in my chart, we have 1/10, 1 part of 10 showing here. Now, if I were to convert that to hundredths, and remember when we're working with equivalent fractions, we just do the same to the top as we do to the bottom. We're multiplying all of our parts by 10 so that we can break it apart. And here we have 10 of our hundredths. Do you see here how they are the same value? I could keep doing that. I could just keep splitting it into thousandths and 10 thousandths and 100 thousandths and so on, but it would be showing me the same amount here. So now that we have that knowledge, let's go ahead and get started in our workbook. So go ahead and pause the video and make sure that you are on Chapter 9 workbook, page 507. It should look like this with lesson 9.3 at the top. And once you're ready to go, Make sure that your finger is on Unlock the Problem where it starts with the name Daniel. And yes, we do have a Daniel in our 4th grade. Hi, Daniel. This lesson is just about you, I guess, today. All right, go ahead and read it to yourself, and then I will read it with you. Awesome. Now it's my turn to read. Daniel spent a day hiking through a wildlife preserve, and that's what that would look like. During the first hour of the hike, he drank 6/10 liters of water. How many hundredths of a liter did he drink? So you might be thinking to yourself, I don't even know what a liter is, Miss Kyle. Well, it's one of those giant water bottles. It would be a liter here. And he's saying that he drank 6/10 of this liter here. So how many hundredths of a liter did he drink? Now, one way we could look at this is writing our equivalent fraction. So if we're dealing with 6/10, here's that model here, go ahead and shade in 6/10, and then see if you can shade in how many hundredths that would be. And now remember, if you want to save yourself some time, you don't have to be counting it. You could instead be counting by tens. So 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. How many hundredths would we have here? And once you've done that, I want you to come over here and think about what that looks like when we're comparing equivalent fractions. So if we have 6/10, that's our starting point. We multiply something to get to 100 here. So 10 times what would give us 100? When we're breaking apart by tens, so what would be in these spots here? Remember, when we're working with an equivalent fraction, it's really important to multiply the same numbers to the top and the bottom. That's showing that we're multiplying it by one whole. So go ahead and make sure that you got the same thing as me. So here in my model, I've shaded in 6/10. So 6 of the 10 pieces we have here, which is the same as shading in 60 hundredths. If we were to overlap these models here, like put this one on top, would they show the same amount? They really would. And over here we can see that we're multiplying it by 10/10. So 10 to both the top and the bottom, to both the numerator and the denominator. So we end up with 60 hundredths. Now, how would that look as a decimal? Well, like we said earlier today, we can start with our 6/10. And remember, it is important for you to have your 0 in the ones place so that we really can recognize this decimal, because we do not want it to get lost. It's really a big difference to say 6/10 versus 6 ones. So here we have 0.6 as our tenths, showing 6/10. Now, what would I do to show that as hundredths? Well, check this out. I'm just adding on another 0. Like I said, I could just keep on adding zeros and it would be considered equivalent, equal to the same amount. So if you wanted to know how many hundredths Daniel drank of a liter, we could say, well, 60 hundredths in fraction form, or what would it be in decimal form? 0.60, or 60 hundredths liters of water. Nice job, 4th grade. Let's go ahead and continue. On page 508, you should see this model that says one way, write 0.30 as an equivalent decimal, or 30 hundredths as an equivalent decimal. Now, if we were looking at our place value chart, we could put it in and just fill in each part. So we have 0 and 3/10 and 0 hundredths. Now, the question down here is, what decimal would 30 hundredths be equivalent to if we were to look at it in tenths? So go ahead and write your answer here, what you think. the equivalent version of this decimal in tenths. Let's see if you got it. Just 3/10. And now, what if we were to write that as an equivalent decimal? Here we have our kind of written form if we were just to say tenths. And how about as a decimal? 3/10. Notice 0.3 is set as 3/10. Nice job, fourth grade. Let's keep it going with one more thing. Now, when you're working with equivalent fractions, you have to do the same to the top as you do to the bottom. So if we're going from 30/100ths to tenths, we're actually dividing by 10 to both the top and the bottom. So what would 30 divided by 10 be? Let's see if you got it. 3/10. You notice we're just taking off a 0 from both the top and the bottom because we're dividing by 10 to both sides, and we end up with 3/10. Now, let's see if you guys can do this quick speed round. You are on it. Write the number as hundredths in fraction form and decimal form. I don't need you to write it this time, but if you could just stay along with me and have it in your head or write it on your paper would be even better to show me that you know what we're working on. So what would 1/10 be if we were to look at it in terms of hundredths? Get it in your head or write it down. Let's see if you got it. 10/100ths. What would that look like in decimal form if we were to write it our hundredths out in decimal form? 0.10 or 10/100ths. Nice job. How about if we were to move to 8/10ths? What would the equivalent be in hundredths? Think about it, get it in your head, write it down. How many hundredths would be the same as 8/10ths? Let's see if you got it. 80/100ths. Notice we are adding a 0 to both the top and the bottom because we are multiplying both numbers by 10/10. How about in decimal form in hundredths? 0.80. That's right, we have that 0 at the end to show that we're talking about hundredths. If we get rid of it and just say 0.8, we are talking about tenths, but they are equivalent. They are the same amount. And last but not least, how about 3/10ths? What would that look like? Get it in your head or write it down. Let's see if you got it. 30/100ths. And what about in decimal form? 3/10ths or 30/100ths would be written as 0.30 or 30/100ths. Nice job, fourth grade. I believe you are ready to go ahead and log into Think Central and complete lesson 9.3. If you run into any issues or have any questions, your teachers are here to support you. Or if you happen to have an adult in the house, see if they can help you as well. We have a lot of really good resources in this time. All right, fourth grade, thank you so much for your time, and I will see you next time.